talk about where that moves things around. Now, on the right, you've got West Africa. The green arrows are all the crude that goes up to Europe. The yellow goes everywhere else. On the left, you have East Asia. That's where the crude oil goes to. The yellow coming from West Africa, the red from the Persian Gulf, the purple from North America, and the blue from the former Soviet space. Now, this is all data as of the first day of the war. Obviously, it's been disrupted since then. What has been going on is we're seeing a redistribution. Normally, crude importers grab crude that is designed for their factories, their refineries, and crude that is relatively proximate. But 20 years of the Chinese rise means that the Chinese have gone out and grabbed crude from everywhere. They're not cost sensitive. They really don't care if it damages the refineries because they'll just rebuild them. And so they've built this spam of links. But the Europeans have more money. And now that the Europeans are scared, they have captured every drop of crude that the Chinese used to get from West Africa, because they had to replace what they used to get from the former Soviet space. So the Chinese now their single largest supplier is from Russia, but not from Russia to Siberia to China. There's no infrastructure there, very little. They certainly can't surge through what they have. So they have to send stuff out through the west of Russia, by Europe, around Africa, and then up to the Chinese. It is now the world's longest supply run. Very vulnerable to any sort of disruption. Again, whether Latvia, or in this case, South Africa, India, plenty of ways that this can go horribly, horribly wrong very, very quickly. Which means that we've got a political decision that we're about to make in the United States. This is everybody's favorite energy secretary. Yeah. I mean, look at who's been energy secretary for the last 20 years. Guys, this could be a lot worse. Just recent history here, come on. Okay, Granholm is in the process of figuring out how to implement an oil export ban from the United States. Legally, there's no question. The presidency has the power. Has since 2015. It was part of an energy deal between Congress and the Obama administration to bring in a lot more green tech, increase the subsidies. They released the oil export ban at that point, but the president has the authority to reinstate it with an executive order. Doesn't need to consult Congress at all. Now, this is an oil export ban, just oil, not refined product, not natural gas, not electricity, just oil. Second, the president has the ability to offer endless numbers of national security waivers. So exports to, say, Canada and Mexico are likely to continue. And third, Granholm is not like her predecessors. She actually talks to industry. She actually seeks out conversations with industry. And so she knows if we just do a blanket ban, that wouldn't work. Their goal is to bring down fuel prices. But the US Gulf Coast is super saturated with crude. They export crude that meets the requirements of other markets, not necessarily our own. Whereas the Northeast, it's the opposite. Very little refining capacity. They have to import refined product from another country. So if you just do a blanket ban, you actually push prices down in Texas, but probably raise them in New York. And that is not what this administration is after. So they're trying to figure out how to make it work. I don't know what that's going to look like. But the point is they're willing to actually discuss this with you. You should take advantage of that. Because we all know what happens when an executive makes a decision without consultation. They always get it right every time. But this is coming. Because if we have a breakdown in Russian flows and that price goes up to 100 to 200, there is no way a president as populist as Biden is not going to take sharp action to keep the American market super saturated and the rest of the world can hang. This needs to be done right, which makes things even worse everywhere else. So same map, we're going to look at natural gas now instead of oil, so the red lines. The one that matters right now is Nord Stream. It's a subsea line that goes from Russia proper under the Baltic, terminating in northern Germany. Until the war started, this was Germany's #1 import source, responsible for almost a third of the natural gas that they use all by itself. At the moment it's offline. The Russians were coy about it before, saying, oh, it's a compressor issue. Oh, there's been a coffee spill on the control panel. They literally spilled coffee on the control panel and took a photo of it, and that was the rationale for why the line was off. I mean, yeah, Russian propaganda is not what it used to be. Anyway, they've become much more naked with their explanations of late, and now it's just that until the sanctions are gone and Germany leaves NATO, this stays off. Okay, you guys are in electricity, you get it. Marginal suppliers, marginal demand, that's what sets the price. Like if you takes a gallon of gasoline to get to work, and you only get 3/4 of a gallon, you'll pay anything you can for that last quarter, but it's not like it's just that last quarter that gets expensive, then it's the whole gallon. Marginal supplier, marginal demand. The Germans have lost their baseline supplier, and they're attempting to replace it with 9 different marginal suppliers. And so prices have exploded, and they're going to stay up. Even worse, they're still getting some natural gas from Russia. Pipes that go through the war zones are now the reliable supplier. Oh my God! So we're looking at the Germans losing even more, which means that natural gas prices and electricity prices in Germany are now at a point where there is not a single German economic entity that is any longer economically viable. Germany's already in recession. If you like VW, if you like Beamers, this is your last chance to get one. This is the end of German manufacturing within 12 months. That assumes that every molecule or electron they're trying to import from all those new marginal suppliers still makes it. It won't. This is now the best case scenario for the Germans. The Russians have said you have to choose between being Western or being modern. And the Germans, at the moment, are choosing to be Western. Honestly, I didn't think it would be this clean cut of a choice for them. But then again, we're also not to winter yet. Okay, let's roll some grenades into the next panel. Solar intensity. The red are zones with today's technology where solar power makes sense economically and environmentally. If you move from the red into the orange, and intensity is not so good, still makes environmental sense, but economically it's probably a wash. By the time you move to green, solar intensity is so low that you will never generate enough electricity to pay down the carbon debt of building the panels in the first place. You put up panels in mass in green, you have increased your carbon footprint. You've done the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. Every dot on the map is a population center of at least 1 million people. And if you go beyond those red lines, you're getting into areas where the seasonal extremities for solar are so much that it's only useful for 3 or 4 months of the year. 3 or 4 months of the year where you usually don't need it for heating or cooling. Okay? Same thing wind. Red good, green bad. All right, now I'm going to combine these. I'm going to show you where it's good for both. So the blue, good for wind. The green, good for solar. The dark green, good for both. We have already eliminated where over 80% of the world's population lives. But we're not done. You don't put up solar panels over a cornfield because they need the sun there. You don't put up wind turbines above 10,000 feet because the air density is so low you can't turn the blades. And you don't put a lot of generation more than 1,000 miles from a population center because you'll lose so much from transmission loss. You factor all that out, this is all that's left. Now, does this mean that green tech is pointless? Not quite what I'm trying to say. I've got solar panels on my house, but I live at 7,500 feet in Colorado. There's nothing between me and the sun. It works great. Is Excel here today? Yeah, these guys are smug as They're in the wind zone of the Great Plains. They've got low population density. Whew, they're going to hit 100%. And they're not going to have to sweat all that much to do it. But everyone else, geography matters, folks, which means there's a tale of 2 environmental policies that are going on right now. And the story of how that is resolved is going to determine ESG. So on the one hand, you've got California, which when it comes to regulation, wow. And on the other hand, you've got Germany, which is basically California regulation, but with better type font. a little bit better organized, a little bit better planned out, but more or less the same thing. And what we're seeing in Germany now is an abject failure of the Energiewende that they have planned for the last 20 years. But the same policies in California, while they are generating hiccups and heartburn, we've had a few brownouts and evolution. And at least for now, it's kind of working. Can it be better? Yes, it can be better. It's still California, still regulation. I don't want to oversell this point. But we have basically the same policy set in two different economies, one of which where the transition haltingly is moving forward, and the other one where we are looking at deindustrialization because of it. Geography matters. And the difference is very simple. California is sunny, and the Germans don't know what sun is. Within the environmental community, this hasn't really sunk in yet. The idea that you have to tailor your ESG programs and your green tech and your transition programs to what actually happens where you live. There's this idea, especially with solar, that's been fetishized. The idea is you just put up more of it and you're good. The idea that Germany has probably increased its carbon footprint because of the Energiewende, that hasn't sunk in yet. But I have a feeling that once people are clustering around these warming centers that they're building in Germany right now, so you can leave your house because your power bill is now more than your mortgage, and you can go to a community center to get warm, and by the way, your manufacturing job is gone. It's going to sink in that we have to change our policies based on where we live. And that with the technology we have today, most of this doesn't work for most of us. Solar in New York is maybe the dumbest thing I've heard, aside from maybe solar in Germany. Same in Toronto. The hilarious thing about all of this, of course, is that in the United States, our sunnier and our windier places are usually red states. And our places that really, really like green tech are usually urban areas in the Northeast. It's completely ass backwards. The first metro region in the United States that is likely to go 100% green isn't in California, it's in Texas. It's probably Dallas-Fort Worth. There are no environmentalists in Dallas-Fort Worth. But the technology today makes sense there. It's in the edge of the solar zone, it's in the heart of the wind zone. It's perfect. Omaha's probably second, Denver's probably third. But you're never going to do this in megalopolis. Until we find a way to marry these disparate facts together, we're going to be spinning our wheels. And that's the good news.